Don't you do that?
All right. So welcome everybody to the virtual meeting for July. And we'll talk a little bit about some of these things that have come down the pike. We'll review some of the stuff that we saw on Instagram, seen on the street, and then review the Summertime Fun Challenge for the next month. A lot of monthly topics to shoot as you go. Think about those ones that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months away. So that you have all the topics that are coming down the pike in the back of your mind. So when you see something, it works. And because you can enter anything that up to 18 months old. So take a look at that. We'll talk a little bit about membership and privileges and getting others to join. We'll talk about competition updates. And then the thing that everybody wants to see is Skylum's Luminar AI by Angela. And we'll have that shortly. So these are some of the Instagram postings that we've had with the hashtag CCB Street 2021. And we had some pretty good ones. So let's see. I know that one on the left, that's down in Cocoa Village.
Yeah, that's Arlene's photo.
Yeah.
That's mine, actually.
Is that yours? Okay.
The one on the right is.
Cocoa Village one is mine.
Okay.
Yeah, but the legs are Arlene's.
And those are Cocoa Village also.
They're both Cocoa Village.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this big tree is, but it's a terrific tree. It looks like the kids
That's
have
in
got a.
Simon's Island.
Oh, St. Simon's Island?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so is the little boy
So
right
there's a
there.
little boy waiting for the bus.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where the bike is hanging on the wall.
Oh, galley, right?
I think so.
It's a different bike.
Yeah, and this stairway looks like an O'Galley stairway too,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken. So, and somebody selling stuff out of a trailer over here on the left. Good to eat.
Chuck's, I believe.
I'm sorry.
I believe that's Chuck's photo.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. I think it is Chuck's photo. Yeah. All right. So speaking of which, this next photo challenge to get out, virtual photo walk, is for Summertime Fun. And you can tag it with CCB Summer Fun 2021 and put it on Instagram, or you can just send it in to Chuck. And all that verbiage says, get out there, keep on shooting, and send it in to Chuck, and he will put it in there for our next info at CC Brevard update. Monthly competitions is what I was talking about before. So if you see something that's a good reflection, remember we have reflection in November. We have motion in September, hometown pride in August. So there's a lot of different topics that are coming down the pike. So keep those in mind as you're out shooting, and you might get one that wins a prize. This is the reminder for everybody. If you have a photo buddy who's not a member, bring them on, have them come along. We give our links out for people that want to try it out and see what a monthly meeting's all about. And I'd have to ask Gene, but I'm pretty sure if you pay your monthly dues, your $35 monthly dues in
Yearly,
Yearly.
annual dues.
annual dues rather. If you did that in September, you go all the way to the following year, or is it October? I can't remember.
It's October, isn't it, Eugene?
It might be October.
What, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
If you pay your annual dues in October, it's good for the next year, correct? So you get about 15 months out of it.
That is my understanding.
That's exactly right. So if you got somebody that's contemplating, have them come sign up in October, and they get next year's out of it.
They know how to work the club.
That's only for new members now.
Correct. That's not renewals.
Right.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks to our resident curmudgeon there to jump in with that clarification. Bob's always, he's hot on that. I know that. So there's new competition help documents. They're on the CC Brevard website under /articles, or you can use the drop down menu. And there's some good help there about resizing your photos, doing things for composition, straightening, and so on for making the best opportunity possible for the monthly competitions. And so whether you're using a PC or a Mac, I think there's a PC tutorial by Chuck and a Mac tutorial by somebody else. I can't remember who now, but there's a Mac tutorial on there as well.
I-
So
That was
did-
by Peter.
I'm sorry, who was it, Matt? Pat?
Peter. It was Peter.
Peter. Okay,
yeah.
good. Here's some things coming down the pike. We're going to have critique night at the Pizza Gallery, and this is going to be in September. Peter, what are the exact dates? I can't remember off the
So
top of
we're
my
gonna
head.
do it on Sunday night instead of the 7th because of some conflicts. So it's gonna be Sunday evening at critique night. John Buck will head a group of moderators. And there'll be more information on it. Pizza Gallery is the town center in Viera. It's a night, we've been there before. So it'll be, you can come a little early and have some dinner, and then we'll have the critique afterwards.
Okay, looking forward to that. I probably won't be there. I've got a family wedding out of town that weekend, so you'll have to slug it out without me. I don't know how we're going to do that, but Bobby Lane coming on the October 5th meeting night, and any hints on what that's all about, Peter?
Yes, I'll give it to you just 1 second. here. Bobby Lane she's gonna do international travel, the cultural perspective. And she travels all over the world, and she's done things for National Geographic. She's photographed in Ethiopia, Myanmar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Turkey, and some more other local places like Cuba and even the Venice Carnival. And she's got some beautiful images that she does. So she's gonna get into how to how to be a better photographer when you travel. And if you can't travel, she's got some great pictures that will make you wish you did travel.
Great. Let's see, we're going to have a picnic, relaunch CCB into the personal meetings coming up October 9th. We're going to do that at Ballard Park in O'Galley there. There's a large pavilion, and we'll reserve that, and we'll have coffee and sodas and Subways and other items at the picnic. And we'll just ask that you RSVP for that one so that we only buy what we need. We'll discuss upcoming club events and talk about new normal, committee memberships, and more. So please put that in your calendar somewhere.
There's also going to be, we're going to do like a scavenger hunt. You can also bring if you have a dog, you want to bring your dog, you can bring them. It's a dog-friendly park. And I reserved a space today. And it's a nice big pavilion there. It has like 6 good-sized tables, and we have, there's some grills there. So I feel like making some hot dogs, we can do that too. And it should be a lot of fun. It's a great way to kick off in-person events with the CCB for the fall and beyond.
What about bringing something?
No,
No?
club is we're gonna pick up, we'll pick up some sodas and water and coffee and some Subway, like I'll get maybe a couple of Subway, big long Subways.
They cut it out.
And like I said, maybe we'll get some hot dogs and buns and things like that. So it'll be fun.
I don't think anybody would chase you out if you brought your salad along, but we're
Yeah,
not
if you
we're
want,
not
it's-
asking for people to bring items. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's coming up in October, and we're going to get some opportunities to talk about in-person meetings. We're going to have opportunities to talk about some photography trips, road trips, things around the state where we can go, kind of like the bus trips we had before all this hit. So we're slowly going to get all this stuff straightened out, and hopefully we'll get back on track here in not too distant future. Okay, Cape Canaveral Lighthouse field trip is coming up this Saturday. You can read all that, but there's lots of places that we're going to go. And the rules are you should have, or you need to RSVP to me. And that was in the email that Peter sent out. And for those of you with a pencil and paper, it's if you look at the bottom of the screen there, it's GHE.photos@gmail.com. That's not how you spell Gmail, but you know what I
Email,
mean.
Got an A in there.
There's something in there that doesn't belong, or it's out of sequence or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
But you all know what I mean. So
We know.
anyway, it's going to be this Saturday, the 10th. And what we're going to do is meet at the south gate of the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station there. And there's a map that I'm going to show you right about now. And you will go in like you're heading towards Cruise Terminal 5 or Cruise Terminal 8. And you're going to go around. And when you get to this first traffic light, don't stop, keep going. And then you're going to get to the second traffic light. Don't stop, keep going. And then you're going to continue.
Don't stop on the
You're going to
red.
continue on down. You'll pass a whole bunch of big oil tanks and gasoline tanks over here. That'll be on your right. And when you get to the third stoplight, you're going to make a right, followed by an immediate left. And you should see the signs there for the Sand, Space, and History Museum, which is right there near the entrance to the park. If you see a guardhouse that, you've got to drive through the guardhouse, you don't want to do that. You want to turn at that traffic light. We're going to gather everybody up there, create us a nice convoy, and then we're going to convoy in from there. So,
Gordon, was that an old SpaceX building?
no, SpaceX actually has the building next door. It's
Next
an old,
door, okay.
yeah, it's an old building, but it is SpaceX. And that's one of their 2 launch complexes, launch control centers for when they launch. And they still launch from there. So, but it is right there by the SpaceX building.
Okay.
For those of you who are conversant with or familiar with GPS, if you put that north 28.419 and west 080.606 in there, it'll take you pretty darn close. So it'll get you right in there. So I'll leave that up just for a second or two in case anybody needs to do a screen capture. But what we're going to do is line everybody up. And if we have singles in cars, we're going to try and combine them to keep the length of the convoy down. And we're going to convoy in. We will be in the Air Force Station for about 3.5 hours or so. And there's no early outs. So don't say, well, I'll join you for an hour and a half and then leave. Won't work that way. You got to stay with us for the whole shooting match because you got to be in the convoy. It's a rain or shine type of thing because there will be some indoor opportunities. And so we'll make sure we have indoor opportunities at the Hangar C as well as the museum and a couple other places on there. So you're going to get the whole shooting match. This is one of my deluxe tours you're going to get here. And so what I plan to do, just to let everybody know, is use there's an Air Force phone number. It's a local 321 phone number. It's an Air Force phone number where you call in, and we use it for teleconferencing, where you can put 100 and some odd people on the line and I'll teleconference. So what I plan on doing is being in the lead car, and we'll have everybody call in and we'll dial in their password, and then everybody can mute their phone. So as we drive in the convoy, I will be able to do a running commentary from the lead car, and everybody in the convoy will hear it. And so that's the theory. And so I can point out things as we go. So there'll be more to follow on that, but bring your camera and just be very careful about following directions. And I'll have a little card that I hand out to everybody with phone numbers and restrictions and things. So does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, well, that's coming down the pike this Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So
Could you put up that email address again? To
sure.
respond.
It's at the very bottom there.
Yeah.
ghe.photos@gmail.com.
Okay.
And just let me know how many people you're going to have, and we're restricting it to Camera Club members and their spouse or significant other. So if your brother and sister and their 20 kids happen to be in town, don't bring all of them. We don't need a big, huge number. We just need the pretty much the Camera Club members and their significant others. What we're talking about.
What about friends? My husband can't come and a friend can come.
Well, we have to let me I'll tell you what, send me an email to that email address with that, and I'll do a head count. And as we get closer, if that's possible, in other words, you want a substitute husband. So I get that. Let me take a look and see how we are head count wise, but off the top of my head, I think we'll be able to accommodate. So we'll go with that.
Excuse me, Gordy.
Yes, Thomas.
Quick question, about the competition, the photo contest.
Yes.
So what's this competition about? Like somewhere around Florida, like a theme park or something?
You're
Or just-
talking about the, let me go
Okay.
back here.
Yeah, opening creative class.
Oh, that's for tonight. That's the deadline for that is midnight tonight. That's so you're open is, in other words, anything that you want is in the open competition, A or B, choose one.
I did like some kind of like animal you got from a theme park or wild like nature or something.
As long as the photo was taken within the last 18 months, you're good.
Is it like June, July, you're saying?
And yeah, July is fine.
What about June?
There's an echo.
Yeah, I know somebody who's echoing needs to mute their phone there. I don't know who that is.
What
Okay,
about June?
It's the name with all the letters that's echoing.
yeah, here, let me take care of that.
07, etc.
Let me take care of that. There we go. All right.
Anyway, it's also like last month, you're saying, like June is part of it.
The monthly competitions are any time in the last 18 months.
Okay.
Okay.
Just to understand. Thank
Yeah,
you.
the weekly things that we have are the one that Chuck is sponsoring, which is this one right here. That
Which is
one is well, anytime in June or July.
That's a competition.
It's not a competition. It's just a virtual photo walk, an opportunity for you to show what summertime fun is to you.
Okay.
The competitions are what you submit in that we have a judge go in and decide which one is the best category A, second, third. Same with category B. And for this coming month, this July, there's also the creative class. So anything that you have obviously modified in some way, shape, or form to make it different from the original, that would go in creative.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I just want to understand because I might pick something that I edited or must have edited.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just some of the things.
Yeah.
Maybe possibly the 4th of July fireworks as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Minor editing that would be considered normal for tweaking a picture is fine for normal competition. The creative should be something where it's really like you're putting a giant sized dog somewhere and you do Photoshop and you do things like that. That's the type of thing under creative where you're significantly changing the appearance of the picture.
So you can pick either open or creative, you're saying?
The creative is the one where you do heavy editing. The open is either A or B. So if you're category A or if you're category B, whatever you think is a good shot that you would like to compete.
Okay, thank you.
All righty.
And creative, you can do 2 images, correct?
Pat,
You can submit 2 creative images in addition to your class image.
So,
okay,
so the open one is just one in either A or B.
correct.
Understood. Thank you.
All righty. Let's see, July's competition. This is what we've been talking about here. So as of midnight tonight is the deadline to get that in to info@ccbrevard.org. And here's the remaining 2021 competition topics. August is Hometown Pride and September is Motion. in October, November, December as depicted there.
Too creative. Doesn't seem-
Okay, tonight we have Efficiently Using Luminar AI presented by Angela Andrio. She's one of the Skylum community managers, and a member of the company's education team. We're going to have a demonstration featuring Luminar AI. Angela will step you through efficiently using it to speed up your workflow. And for those of you who may be looking for some software to post-process your images, this may be an option for you using the artificial intelligence. And I am not an expert in this by any stretch, but Angela is, and she will be helping you out. This is a little bit about her. She's a photographer, blogger, photography coach. She lives in Chesapeake, Virginia with her Navy husband, but now she says she lives in California.
I
So
do. That's an old bio.
It is, but you know what? I Googled you and there it was. Do you still have the cat Pumpkin?
No, unfortunately, he passed away about a year and a half
Oh,
ago.
that's sad.
Yeah, it was a big loss. But last year we adopted 2 new pandemic babies, little quarantine babies, and we have 2 cats now. They're full grown at this point. They're kittens at the time, so we have new
super.
fur babes in our life.
Oh, good. Well, that's super. So anyway, I'm going to go down here and I am going to stop sharing and turn it over to Angela where she can take over.
Awesome.
You got it.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll jump in. Thank you for the very warm welcome. I appreciate it.
Angela, before we start, could I just ask everybody to please mute your microphones?
Yes.
Unless you have a question. That way we will not be battling the feedback or anything else. Thank you.
Excellent. And I don't mind if you guys pop in and ask questions as we go. I don't mind that at all. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about how to make really cool photos in record time. And by that, I mean, we're focused on the results, not the process. And sometimes things are slower when you're using Photoshop and some of the older photo editing methods. AI is a great tool that can help speed up and make your workflow more efficient while you still have creative control and have fun. So as was mentioned, my name is Angela and I'm product evangelist for Skylum Software. I also do community management and all sorts of other things for the company. I've been with them since late 2017 and have started out just helping out with their Facebook groups. And now I'm on the evangelism team, creating educational content, doing presentations like this all the time. I'm also the president of the Dark Roomers Photographic Club here in San Diego. It's one of the oldest camera clubs in California and is a group of amazing people. So I have a particular love for camera clubs like this. Such great groups of people. And I've learned so much over the years from my camera club friends. So I just want to say I'm happy to be here and, camera clubs are pretty awesome. All right, so what we're going to go over today is how AI, artificial intelligence, impacts the world of photography, some of the unique adjustments you can make in Luminar AI, how they can make your workflow more efficient and creative. And if you already have an existing workflow with things like Lightroom, Photoshop, things like that, you can integrate Luminar AI into those workflows. So a little bit about our company. I'm not going to go into super in-depth here, but we've been around since 2008. We have over 140 employees worldwide. Over 60 of those are focused on research and development, engineering, and quality assurance. So we have a huge innovation team, and they come up with some really, really cool stuff. We also have our software in 11 languages. We provide a community for a worldwide community of photographers. So that's one of the greatest things about my job is I get to talk to and work with people all around the world and work with photography, which is just amazing. So a little bit about our flagship application, Luminar AI. It's the first image editor fully powered by artificial intelligence. And what I mean by that is that's what's going on under the hood. It takes a look, as soon as you bring the image in, it takes a look at your image, analyzes the content, the subject matter, the depth, all these different variables, and it makes recommendations based on what's in the image. So I'll walk you through a little bit more of that as we get into the software, but it's really pretty remarkable what it does. And the reason we've gone down this path of AI image editing is because old photo editing methods are slow and outdated. I come from the world of learning Lightroom and Photoshop from the ground up. I've been using Lightroom since version 1. And, even though I started with a version 1, there was a steep learning curve. And is such a huge program. And if you're new to photo editing, it can be super daunting. What we wanted to do was take some of the techniques and things that photographers like to do and need to do with their images and make them easier and more accessible for everybody while still creating the same amazing results. So that's where we come to, we're focused on the result, not the process. It's really easy as photographers to get sucked into, I spent 3 hours in Photoshop on this image, look how cool it is. Whereas it's not necessarily about how long you spent, but the impact of the image and your final results. So that's what we're all about. So here are some of our tools for landscape and travel photography. It sounds like your group does a lot of those kinds of things. A couple of my favorites here, we have Sky AI, which does automated sky replacements and even does reflections in water, which is pretty cool. I also love Structure AI. It's very similar to clarity sliders and things you find in other programs, but what's cool about Structure AI is that it is human aware. So you can go ahead and bring up that structure, and I'll show you this when we demo the software in a few minutes. You can bring that up and it's still going to retain natural skin tones, skin textures when you have a human in the image. Otherwise, it'll target all sorts of other cool stuff in the image. It does less texture to open areas like blue sky, so you don't end up with like crinkly artifacts in places that you don't want them. It's really pretty cool and pretty smart. So lots of great tools if you're a landscape and travel photographer, which is kind of where I find myself. If you're into portraits, we've got some really, really amazing portrait tools as well. So a couple of my favorites here, Iris AI does amazing things with eyes, no masking involved. And coming very, very soon, it says coming 2021. Well, that date is coming very, very soon. We have Portrait Bokeh AI coming. And what that does is it naturally blurs the background. So you can see kind of a preview of it down here in the bottom right, that it takes and makes that bokeh effect for a portrait. It's really, really stunning. I've seen it demoed a couple of times and I can't wait to share it with everybody. All right. So from there, let's go ahead and jump into Luminar AI and see what it can do. Before we do that, are there any questions in the chat, or does anybody have any questions they want to pop in and ask?
I have a question.
Sure, go for it.
I have Luminar and I have Luminar AI.
Okay.
And in some of the Q&A, it was emphasized that AI is not an upgrade to Luminar. It's a separate standalone software. And I'm trying to wrap my head around that. I look at it as an upgrade. I don't understand what you mean when you say it's a separate standalone software.
That's a really, really good question. So the reason we branded them that way is because there are things that are present in Luminar 4 that are not in Luminar AI. For instance, if you are a heavy user of layers, Luminar 4 has layers, Luminar AI does not. We have some functionality that takes the place of some of those reasons you might want to use layers, but it doesn't have all of that functionality. But on the other hand, Luminar AI has a bunch of new AI tools that you're not going to find in the older Luminar 4. So for people who need kind of the best of both worlds, you can use both side by side on your computer. And Luminar 4 is still being actively supported. It's going to be getting performance updates and new software support and things like that. But all new functionality, all new tools will be in Luminar AI. So
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any other questions? All right, so let's start off with some really quick and simple edits. Now, I know most of you are probably in the group where you like to have a little bit more creative control and you don't necessarily like to do the one-click edits. And as a photographer, I feel a little bit guilty when I do a one-click edit, like I really shouldn't be done that fast. But the one-click edits, what we call templates here in Luminar AI, are really pretty spectacular. So I wanted to take a moment and show those to you and what they can do. So let's go ahead and pull up this really beautiful landscape and take a look at our template tab. So before I go too far, let me just give you a quick overview of our user interface. We have our plus button here, and this is how you add folders or images into album, or it'll go into folders over here. So you can, let me go ahead and just show that. You can see the folders that I have imported. So there is a basic file management system here. I'm gonna go ahead and hide that again, just to get it out of the way. And you can add whole folders, you can add images. We have our templates tab next, which is where we're gonna go next. Edit has all of your editing tools. So if you don't wanna do a one-click edit with a template, you can jump straight over into edit, or you can click a template and then go in and do any refinements that you want. And then you can also export your images out to a TIFF, JPEG, depending on what you want to do with it. So there's a lot we can go into as far as the image management and all of that. But I think the more fun thing to do is look at what it can do for edits. So we're going to start with templates. And I'm going to click back to our main template panel here. And up at the top, this is where the AI starts to do its work. We have this for this photo section that is going to look at the image and make some suggestions of template collections that might be a good fit for this image. Now, for this particular image, I'm actually going to scroll down. There's one down here that I really like called Waterscapes. And there's a bunch of different ones. So even though it's not one of the ones that is recommended up here at the top, there are a lot of other collections of templates that you can browse. So I'm going to go to Waterscapes. And I'm going to choose this one called Deep Focus. Now with one click, it's done a tremendous amount of work. It's brought out detail. I mean, all of the clarity that you can see down here in the water and the colors popped. We can take a look here at the before and the after. And for some people, that might be all you need to do. Now I look at this and I think maybe it went a little bit over the top. I can go down to this overall amount slider at the bottom and pull that back a little bit and kind of get the best of both worlds. So that is the easiest, quickest type of edit. If you're in a hurry, you just want to maybe take a family snapshot that you did on your phone, add a template, just make it look that much better, export and share it, you're good to go. If you want to do a little bit more with your images, let me go ahead and go back to my catalog. And I'm going to take this beautiful portrait here. And we're going to start again with a template. Let me go ahead and let that render. There we go. Now we can go to our templates. I'll go back to my main template category. And we can take a look at what is recommended. And this Essence collection has some beautiful portrait templates. And inside the portrait templates, it makes use of our AI portrait tool. So it recognizes that there are faces in there, and it does retouching at the click of one button. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the Fashionista, and it automatically smoothed the skin, it popped the color, and just overall made the image look beautiful. So take a look at the before. There we go. There's the before and the after. It's a very natural effect, but it smoothed the skin and it just made it overall look better. Now, if you take a look at that and you go, okay, but I need to tweak it a little bit. It needs to be cropped. There's a few things we can do. All you need to do is click over to the Edit tab. And I'm going to scroll up to the very top here and take a look at the tools that were used. Now, each tool that was used has that little dot next to it, so you can see what was done. And that's also a really good way to learn Luminar AI, so you can click through the different templates and see what different tools are used in making those looks. Once you're comfortable with those tools, if you want to, you can always just head right over to the Edit tab and start moving sliders. Totally up to you. So for this image, I'm going to go ahead and collapse our Sky AI there. And I'm going to come up to Composition AI. And we've got a couple of different options here. So when you go into Composition AI, which is our crop tool, it automatically brings up the marching ants and the handles on the corner, so we can resize and crop this if we want. We also have an AI option for Composition AI. So I can click this button and it's going to recommend a crop for me. And I absolutely love what it did to this image. It just pulled us in a little bit tighter on the faces. It cropped out this little bit of arm down here. And I think that looks great. So I can hit return on my keyboard and commit that crop. If I wanted to, I can go into any other of these parameters or even add other tools and adjust them as necessary. So with just a couple of clicks, we've gone through and made this image look so much better. You can even copy these adjustments to other images in a series, so you can synchronize and batch process an entire series of portraits very, very quickly. Let me go ahead and get this toolbar here out of my way. There we go. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at some of the quick edits, are there any questions before we keep going?
I have a question.
Go
Do you
for it.
work with JPEGs or in the RAW?
My personal workflow is I work with raw images. Some of the images I'm working with today are JPEGs, some of them are raw. I believe this one here, if I go back to my catalog, down here at the bottom, we have a little info panel, and this is a CR3 file from a Canon. So it works with both. They have a very extensive list of supported cameras for raw files, but you can do really amazing things with JPEGs as well. I believe this one here is a JPEG. So you're not limited to having to use RAW if that's what you're asking.
Hey, Angela, just kind of expounding upon that topic. It does not negate the fact that the JPEGs are going to have less color depth or less data in the file than a RAW file will have. So I'm assuming that Luminar AI takes that into consideration or doesn't try and push beyond the amount of data that's in the file. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So let me just jump over here to our edit tab, looking at this particular image. Enhance AI is one of our, it's our flagship tool here within the program. And where a lot of image editors have an auto button, we have a slider and it's called Accent AI. And this is kind of our automatic improvement slider. It looks at the color, contrast, tone, exposure, highlights, shadows, and automatically balances those out. If you have an image that's overexposed, it's going to bring down those highlights. If you have a photo that's underexposed, it's going to bring up those shadows. And it's all doing that with that AI technology. So as I bring this down, you can see that it's making a pretty significant difference on the image, but it still looks good. So even all the way up to 100, I think it's a little bit far. And you can see if you look closely, let me go ahead and zoom in to, let's say 200% so you guys can hopefully see it. I was noticing some banding and artifacts up here in the sky from pushing this all the way to 100. I'm not seeing them now. That might have been a render issue. But in general, especially with JPEGs, you're not going to have as much flexibility to push those sliders. You are going to end up with JPEG or with artifacts quicker with JPEGs than you will with a RAW file. A RAW file has so much more data for you to work with. And if at all possible, I encourage you to work with a RAW file. But if you're working on stuff from your mobile phone or an older JPEG before you knew to shoot RAW, you totally can. Any other questions? All right. Let's play a little bit more. So on this beautiful image from Norway, I think it's absolutely gorgeous, but it needs a little something. It lacks that pop. So I'm going to go to templates and give myself a slightly better starting point. I'm going to click back to the main template menu. And I'm going to go to this scenery category, which is recommended, and use this template called Fast Fix. This has to be one of my favorite templates, especially for landscape photos, but I've used it on a variety of different subject matter, and it does brilliant things. So check this out. One click, and it's beautiful. Now, I do think maybe the color is a little bit over the top, but I love the contrast that it brought out. I think I also want to use a vignette on this to bring us in a little bit closer and bring our eye into the village. So that's where I'm going to go over to our edit tab, and I'm going to take a look at which tools were used to see which one is adding just that little too much bit of color. So I can turn a tool off and then back on, and you'll see that a lot of that color is coming from our Enhance AI. So I'm going to actually back that off a bit. And I really liked the structure and contrast that it was adding. So we have a couple of really great tools you can use to add back in some contrast. One is going to be under our light tool, and this is kind of the typical raw development tool. But once you get used to using that Enhance AI, you're very rarely going to need to come in here. But we do have one slider here called Smart Contrast. And that's also AI based, but it's one of our older tools. So it's not labeled as AI, but it is a very smart contrast tool. So we can adjust that a little bit. And you also have your structure AI, which works just your mid-tone contrast. So I can boost that up a little bit as well, just to add a little bit more punch to the image. And now we can take a look at our before and our after. That's looking really good. Now, if you have a really tough contrast situation that you need to work your shadows, highlights, and midtones separately, down at the bottom, we have another tool called Super Contrast, which allows you to control all of those different aspects by themselves. It's a really great tool. I'm not going to get into it right now, but if you have Luminar AI or you get it and add it to your collection, definitely check that out. All right, so the last thing I want to do to this image is add a nice, big, soft vignette. So I'll go to our vignette tool, and I have a very unique vignetting procedure. I take my amount slider and I rack it all the way down to -100. And in this case, I'm going to bring the size down a bit smaller. And what I'm doing here is I want to really see where that vignette is affecting my photo. That's why I make it so dark. Now I'll go into my advanced settings, And I'm going to change the feather here and bring that up really, really high because I said I wanted a big soft vignette. You never want somebody to look at your image and say, wow, that's a nice vignette. That's typically not a compliment. So I want to make that really soft so it feathers out from the center and you really can't tell there's a vignette added. You can see it now because I have it at 100, negative 100. But wait, bear with me here. We'll also add some inner light. And what this does is it draws the eye in to the center of the image. So I'm going to pull that up a little bit and now go up to choose subject. And I'm going to place the center of my vignette right over this village. And I can just click around until I get that placed where I want it. Now that I have my vignette placed, I'll go back to my amount slider and back that off to the point that I think it looks natural, which is going to be right about there. And again, you really can't tell that I added a vignette. The edges are only slightly darker and it feathers in so naturally that it just draws your eye into the village. So if we turn that off and then back on again, you can see how that just subtly brings you in. So I love what that did to the photo and then our overall before and after. So you kind of get the best of both worlds here. You get a better starting point by using a template, but you have full creative control over the image by going into the edit tab. Let's take a look at another photo and play with the sky replacement. And this has to be one of the most fun and controversial tools inside Luminar AI. Some people love sky replacement and think it's the greatest thing ever. Some people think it's cheating. I love to use it. It's a great way to add visual interest to a sky. But for a camera club, here's the thing. With my camera club, anything goes as far as editing, but if you're going to put in an element, it has to be your own. So when doing skies, you have to use your own skies when you're doing sky replacement. So I'm not sure what the rules are for your club, but if you're going to do something like sky replacement, that might have to go into, say, that creative category that you're talking about earlier. But it's a lot of fun to do, and it really can add a different mood and feeling to a photo. So let's go ahead and start with our templates. And I'm going to stick here in our scenery collection and use this one called Clear and Sharp. And I would say this is probably my second favorite. And look at how it actually brought out some detail in our sky, brought out some nice detail here in the grass. So one click got us a better starting point. Now from there, we'll go over to our edit tab and we're going to scroll down to Sky AI. And as we go through our different skies, we have a bunch that are built in. I have several different packs that I've loaded. Some of these are free. Some of these were purchased through the Skyline Marketplace. And you can also add your own. So I have a folder here that's called My Favorite Skies. So let me go ahead and choose that one. And we'll use one of my own skies for this image. I'm going to go ahead and choose this one. I called it Streaky Sunrise Purple because it's a very purple, streaky sunrise. There we go. Now, it looks pretty good, but you can see that there's a little bit of area over here where it didn't blend perfectly. We can quickly fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and click out of that menu and shift my horizon position down a little bit. And now we have a perfect mask right there along the hillside. Let's go ahead and zoom in and you'll see that even all of those little fence posts, or those might be posts and vineyards up there too, everything's perfectly masked. There's really no issues that need to be dealt with. If you come across a tough situation where the mask doesn't get everything just right, there is a mask refinement section. And these tools are really, really powerful and can help through some really difficult situations. So if you have a big tree with a lot of spindly branches, this will help fill in some of those gaps. It'll also help in situations where, let's say you guys are going to see a lighthouse soon. Lighthouses are particularly difficult, especially ones that are white, because when you do a sky replacement, sometimes the AI sees that sky and sees that white lighthouse as sky. So it applies some of that sky texture over the lighthouse. These tools here under mask refinement will help take that away. So that's something good to know. Now let me go ahead and zoom back out here and we'll play a little bit with the look and feel of the sky. So I'm going to go to scene relighting. This section works on our foreground. So it makes the light that's coming from the sky match the color and saturation of the foreground. Right now, the foreground's a little too bright for as dark as the sky is. So I'm actually going to bring that relight strength up. And you'll see that's darkening down my foreground, but we're still not losing the detail that we brought in with that template. We can also increase the relight saturation, which is going to bring in more of those blues and purples and oranges and pinks. And just in the way the light characteristics are hitting those hillsides. If there was a human in this image, relight human will make a very realistic effect with the light and how it wraps around the subject. So that's always good to know if you have people in your image. There's no water in this particular image, so we're going to skip over reflection, and I'm going to go straight down to sky adjustments. The first one here, defocus, is very important if you have a situation where you're shooting something that's a shallow depth of field. A dead giveaway to a sky replacement is if you have a sharp subject, a shallow depth of field that falls off beautifully, and a perfectly crisp sky. In that situation, if you're going to replace the sky, you want to use this defocus slider to bring that up to blur the sky so it blends seamlessly with your background. In this instance, we have a pretty deep depth of field because it's a landscape. So I'm only going to use a tiny, tiny bit of this defocus just to take the edge off of the clouds. If you're shooting at a higher ISO and you need to add in a bit of grain to the sky, just for a smooth transition, again, if you blow these things up big and you're going to print large, you want to make sure that the textures in your foreground match the textures in your added sky. So if you need to, you can add some grain. I almost always add a heavy amount of atmospheric haze. To me, it just makes things look a little bit more natural. And you can adjust the warmth and brightness of the sky. So with a sky replacement, we've really changed the look and feel of this image. I can turn this off and then back on again, and it's really quite wonderful. Now, to add one more fun element to this image, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to our atmosphere AI. And what this does is adds some realistic fog and mist and kind of intensifies that atmosphere that we added, that atmospheric haze that we added to the sky. We can do some stuff with the foreground now. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my amount slider up pretty high so we can see what's going on. And then I'm going to scroll through our different options. So we have fog, layered fog, which you can see that's kind of more, right here across the top of the hills. Actually, that looks quite beautiful. And let's go ahead and take a look at what mist does. Mist is all over the sky. And then we have our haze, which is again, right here at the horizon. I think for this image, I really like the layered fog. And then we can increase or decrease the depth of how that rolls across the foreground. And this is using depth mapping. This is another AI tool. So it's looking at the depth of the image and gauging where to put this effect, but you can control how much or how little of it is there. So I think right about there looks good. I can back off the amount a little bit, and it just adds that little bit of extra dimension and depth to the image that I think, if you're there at sunrise, there's maybe a little bit of mist rising up off the fields, and that feels to me very, very natural. So let's go ahead and take a look at the before and the after. And also with the atmosphere AI, the before and the after. It's a really subtle thing. You would never know that it was added unless you see the before and the after. But honestly, it makes it feel more natural to me. Personal taste, it's up to you whether or not you want to add those kinds of elements. So,
Angela?
Yes.
Excuse me. I see some banding and blocking in the dark blues of the sky way up towards the top. Is there a debanding or deblocking tool?
So, I mean, usually when there's banding or something like that, it's because the adjustments were pushed too far. I am not seeing any banding or blocking. I'm wondering if that is an artifact of Zoom, unfortunately.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I'm zoomed in pretty close here. We can even take this into 200%. I'm not seeing anything. That darn Zoom. Go back to fit to screen. If you end up having those types of artifacts, one thing that you might want to pay attention to with, say, a sky replacement specifically, is make sure you're using a large enough sky for the image you're putting it into. So if you are shooting your artistic pictures with a high megapixel camera, let's say one of those 40 or 50 megapixel cameras, but yet you go out and you see a beautiful sky that you capture with your 2 or 3 year old iPhone. That resolution of your iPhone, and you try to take that sky and pop it into that 50 megapixel photo, you're going to probably end up with some pixelization and banding. It's just because you're trying to take more pixels and make them bigger than they were originally. The other thing would be is if you're trying to push that processing too heavy. So if I go over here to my edit, and let me scroll back up here to my Enhance AI tool, we also have a tool here called Sky Enhancer, and this does work on an inserted sky. So if I go ahead and push this up really high, if I push that up and this image up here is low quality, I would definitely start seeing some grain and banding and other artifacts up there. So if you find that, you just need to back off those tools. Some images are going to give you more opportunities to play than others, and that's where having a raw image over a JPEG is going to be helpful. Similarly with sky replacements, most of the sky replacements people do, they use JPEGs for the sky replacement. I like to use a TIFF, even though it's a bigger file, takes up more space, it's a higher quality file, but that's my personal preference.
Angela, the sky replacements that you can buy from Skylum, are they TIFFs or JPEGs?
They're typically JPEGs, but they're usually quite large.
Okay.
So you shouldn't have any problems with them. Using a TIFF is, that tool will load a TIFF as well. And I like, for my own custom skies, I save them as TIFFs. It might be overkill, but that's what I like to do.
I have another question. You were talking about grain. We've all learned to not have any noise whatsoever in our pictures. It's bad and all that. And people say add grain. Well, that's adding noise. Can you explain why we need to add grain and when we need to add grain?
Well, I mean, that is kind of a loaded question and a very controversial one. So grain in digital photography, we see that as noise and we see it as an artifact, as a defect. But it is something that we have to deal with, especially if we start shooting in low light and high ISOs. When that happens, there are tools that can minimize it, but there's no way in, like, say, if you're shooting at 128,000 ISO, that you're going to be able to get rid of all of it. There's still going to be some there. It's not going to necessarily be obtrusive. It's not going to ruin your image, but it's still there. We have things like denoise here, and most photo editors have some sort of noise reduction tool. And the thing with that is they do tend to remove detail when they remove the noise. Ours is no different than that. It does a pretty good job, but you do end up losing some detail. So you want to moderate that with adding extra details in certain areas, doing it selectively. So in this particular image, if there was a bit of grain here in the grass, we'd never really see it. But up here in the flat areas of the sky, it could be very, very noticeable, especially if we print it large. One thing I've seen people do to add some grain is, one, they want kind of a vintage look. They're going for that film look. That's fine. Another thing is, if you have to do noise reduction to remove grain, sometimes people add back in grain because it's actually, so let's take a look here at, let me see if I can find something that has some noise in it. Let's go ahead and take a look at this image right here. And just for the sake of experimentation, go to my light tool, and I'm going to pull the exposure way up, and we're going to create some noise. So I'm going to go to light, grab that exposure. And in doing this, and opening up these shadows that dramatically, we're going to have some noise. So let's go into 200%. And actually, you can see it back here pretty good. So there's quite a lot of grain and noise back there because we pulled so much detail out of the shadows. Now you can go in and use the denoise tool and get rid of a good deal of that. But what some people like to do is, once they pull this up, they go down to the film grain tool. And digital noise is very random and pretty ugly. Film grain, especially for those of you who shot film back in the day, or maybe even still shoot film from time to time, it can have its own distinct beauty. And so by adding the film grain, some people think that that's a little bit more attractive. And it can also hide some of the artifacts that you get if you have to go really heavy on noise reduction. So adding in a little bit of film grain that's a little bit more regular and prettier. It's still grain, I don't typically do that. If there's, any of these templates that have film grain in them, I usually remove it. It's a very personal thing, but you can add that in and it can give you a very vintage look, and it can kind of even out some of the artifacts that you might have from, say, heavy-handed noise reduction. Does that kind of answer your question?
Kind of. So you kind of use it in low light conditions or real tough conditions where you've really cranked your ISOs and things.
Exactly.
I mean,
and also if you're going
a
for a
base
vintage look.
ISO or even 1,000 ISO, it's not going to do that much to the picture.
most modern cameras are not going to have that much grain from 1000 ISO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I know I'm shooting these days with a Canon R6 and I can push the ISO on that to crazy levels. And yeah, there's grain there, but it's not obtrusive and I don't have to do much with it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And revert that to the original, zoom back out. And
I have a question.
Go for it.
Is this editing you're doing, is that actually operating on the picture or is it non-destructive like Lightroom?
Completely non-destructive. All right, so the Luminar AI points to a folder where your image is located, but all of your changes similar to Lightroom are held in Luminar's catalog. So if I go ahead and right click on this image and show it in Finder, it's gonna pull up that raw file there. And there's my unedited raw file. You can see it's completely untouched. All of the edits I did over here in Luminar are not affecting the raw file. In order to have a file that shows these changes, I have to export it out of Luminar, same as Lightroom, to show those changes. If you need to step back in your history, over here in our edit tab, there's a little clock icon over here on the right. Let that load back up, there we go. And we have all of the last 50 steps that I did that I can step back and even all the way down back to my original. So you can always go back to your original unedited image and start over.
Angela, on your history, can you remove a single step or do you have to remove back to that step and then start over from there? In other words, can you take just one of these editing steps and remove it and leave the rest both before and after it in effect?
Not from the history panel. So let's say I go down here and I realize I don't like that I changed my sky enhancer amount here. If I click back to the step, everything above it will be removed. However, I can go back to my tools and then up to my enhance and my sky enhancer and move that down to 0 if I want. So you can use that as kind of a reference point to see what tools were used. And if you go, I don't like that in there, all you have to do is go back over to the tools menu, the edit view, and adjust that particular tool. Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and do one more here. And we've got a portrait. Beautiful. Dan and Shell, they're a couple of photographers, and this is actually one of their self-portraits, a couple of photographers that we work with, and they make some really, really gorgeous images. So I'm going to start this one off with a template. So go over to my templates tab and click back to my main templates page. And I'm going to go to, let's see here. None of those really call me. So I'm going to scroll down to another category I like here called Easy Portraits. And I'm going to choose High Key. And I like High Key for this one because it opens up the shadows really nicely and you can see everybody a little bit better. It's not so bright and over the top. Some High Key looks can be very, very bright, but because this image is a little bit underexposed, I think it works quite well. Now, in looking at this, it is a little bit off as far as the white balance. So let's go ahead and correct that. I'm going to go over to Edit and under our Light tool, which is, as I mentioned, our raw development tool. And I can either choose a white balance preset, or in this instance, I'm just going to grab the temperature slider and move that to the left to pull some of the yellow out of the image. And I think right about there looks good. Let's also give this a little bit of a crop. I think that we can pull this in and make it a little bit closer to them. Let's go to a composition AI and see what the AI recommends here. Now, I'm not fond of that crop. And this is where I like to say that the AI is a tool, but you are still a photographer. So I take a look at what it recommended. I don't like it. I can move this around, adjust it however I want. You are not in any way required to do what the AI says. So I think that's a much better crop. I'll pull that in a little tighter. It's a little bit more intimate with them. Hit return on my keyboard to go ahead and apply that. And now we have a better image. I also want to show you here quickly, if we go down to our portrait tools into Face AI, a little bit of face light is already being used, but their faces are a little bit dark and in the shadow. So I'm going to pull that up a little bit higher and you'll see without any masking, that's going to add a little bit of additional light to their faces. I can pull it up really high. You can see the effect, but it's just adding a little bit of light to their faces. And I think that looks beautiful. So we can go back to our catalog. And again, if you have a whole series of these images, you can right click on an image, go to adjustments, you can copy those and paste them to any other image. So if you don't want to make your own template, which you can, you just have to go to adjustments, copy adjustments, and then you can apply them to any image. So let's go back over here to our catalog and take a look at some images where we might want to have complete and total creative control. So for those of you who don't like the idea of using a template, you feel like it's cheating maybe a little bit, or maybe you just know exactly what you want to do to your image and you're going to go straight to those tools and make it happen. Let's start with this beautiful landscape here. And I'm going to skip over templates, go straight to edit. Now I'm going to go up here to the top and kind of just work my way down the list. So I'm going to go to Enhance AI and use our Accent AI. And that's going to even out the tone, the exposure, the contrast. And I can actually rack that up all the way to 100. And I think it does beautiful things for this image. One slider before and after. Now let's go ahead and refine the composition a little bit. We'll go to our composition AI and let's see what the AI recommends. I think that's actually a much better crop. I might adjust that just a tiny bit and hit return on my keyboard to go ahead and commit that crop. Now I see that I don't even know what this is over here, but it's very distracting. I want to get rid of it. From there, I'll go to our erase tool. There's a question?
No, I said it's Bigfoot.
It's Bigfoot, yeah, it might be. So I'm on the erase tool. I can use the bracket keys to make my brush size bigger and smaller. You can also use this brush radius slider over here. And I'm just going to paint that in and click erase, give it a moment to render. And that ugly black spot, Bigfoot, whatever it is, will be gone. Now we'll go over to our structure tool and come on, finish rendering. There we go. That's beautiful. Sometimes it does take a moment to render. All right, now let's push up our structure a little bit. And this is just going to add some of that mid-tone definition to the image. You'll notice everything from adding some edges to the clouds, a bit more detail in the mountain. Everything is improved with a little bit of structure. So we can take that off and on again. I love the structure tool. If you have something that you want to soften the detail, this amount slider also goes negative. And so that's something that a lot of people tend to forget. If you want to soften something, negative structure is awesome. So we can go ahead and make that very soft and dreamy if we want as well. I don't think it works particularly well for this image. I think going that direction is better. And I think that's great right there. Now we'll go down to our landscape tool and I want to add golden hour. And unlike using a white balance, this targets the warmer areas of the image and it just makes it look like it's, you know, that golden hour time of the day. So I can push that up really high. It gets a little bit unnatural looking. So I'm going to pull that back to a point where it still looks natural. And then we also have our foliage enhancer, which this is going to impact all of our greens. In this instance, I don't really think it needs it. But what I encourage you to do if you play with the foliage enhancer is make sure you click into the advanced settings and work with this hue slider. So for an example here, let me go ahead and pull this up and you'll see that everything becomes over the top, kind of acidic, crazy green. So you can change that hue and make it a little bit different if you want. So you can pull it back. When you have trees, you can make them look a little bit more fall colors. You can make fall colors really pop. You can do all sorts of really cool things with a slider. That way is not so good. But down this way, you can change kind of the time of year by using that and then back off that foliage enhancer. In this case, I like the colors as they naturally were. I just kind of wanted to show you what that tool did. So I'm going to pull that back off of there. All right, finally, let's add a nice big soft vignette. Now, what I want to do with this vignette is really zero in on our flower. And I want to draw the eye in there, but not have it be like, again, we don't want anybody to say beautiful vignette. So we're going to grab that amount slider, pull it down to -100. Because we're targeting a relatively small area, I'm going to grab the size slider and pull that down really far too. Now we'll grab our feather, pull that up nice and high. And we're going to add quite a bit of inner light here. And you'll see how the center of that vignette just got a bit lighter. Now let's grab our choose subject and move the center of that vignette right over our flower in this valley right here. Now I can take my amount slider, move that back up. Maybe right about there. And I think that looks absolutely gorgeous. So now we can turn that off and turn it back on again. And again, you just see how it just very subtly brings you in to the center of the image, that subject, that beautiful little flower. So that's one way you can go in and have full creative control. Let's try doing something similar with a gorgeous portrait here. So this photo was captured by Javier Perdina. He is one of the photographers that we work with. And I'm going to go straight to our edit tab, and we'll start with some enhance AI. So I'm going to pull up the Accent AI, and I'm going to actually pull this way up and then turn it off and then back on again. Notice that her skin tones are hardly affected at all. And that's the beauty of Accent AI. Also Structure AI, they're both what we call human aware. So when you have a person in the scene, it's not going to do crazy things to their skin tone and skin texture. So you'll notice as I move this slider, it's really only affecting the background. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up pretty high. And then we're going to do the same thing with our structure. And I'm going to bring that up really high, and you can see her skin tone is not affected, but the background got much more defined. So I'm going to actually back that off for a more natural look. If you wanted to take that background really soft, you can also bring that down. And you'll notice that some of the details on her dress got softer. Her skin did get a little softer. Her eyes are still sharp. So the human aware aspect of Structure AI is pretty powerful. We'll go ahead and leave that there. And let's go ahead and crop this in for a slightly better composition. For this particular photo, there's a lot of negative space happening up here at the top. I don't really think it adds anything to the photo, so I'm going to crop that down to a square and pull that in right about there. I think that's lovely. And hit return on my keyboard. Now, one thing I'm noticing is the highlights on her face here are a bit hot. So we can go into our light tool and grab our highlights and just back off those highlights a bit. Pull back that detail. Much, much better. And now we can go play with our portrait tools, which are so much fun. I'm not a portrait photographer, but I love retouching portraits, and tools like this make it just so much fun. So we'll start with our face AI, and we have our face light slider, but her face, we just pulled back on those highlights. We really don't need to add any extra light to her face. Also, if you're shooting with a wide angle lens and you're up close to somebody, it might make them look a little bit wider than they're supposed to be. You can use slim face to make that look a little bit more natural, pull back a little bit on the distortion. Under the eyes category, this is where we can start having some fun. So let's zoom in and take a look at her gorgeous eyes. So she naturally has brown eyes, but under here we can make them whatever color we want. So we can make her eyes blue. We can make them cat eyes, which I really wouldn't recommend, but you can do that and there's no masking involved. For this particular image, I'm going to make her eyes brown. Her eyes are already brown, but if we turn this off and back on again, you'll see it's added a little bit of extra detail that wasn't actually there before. Then I'm going to back off the iris visibility because I want to blend it more seamlessly with her natural eye. So pull that back a little bit. I'm going to add iris flare. And what this does, when you just ping that to the top, is it adds a light at the bottom of the eyeball. And that's, so if you had somebody with a reflector standing in front of your subject, bouncing that light up into their eyes, that's the effect that you would get. Now that's a little bit strong, so I'm going to back that off, but it just adds a little bit of lens flare and light to the eye. And I think it makes it look really nice. We don't need to enlarge her eyes. Her eyes look great. We can add a little bit of eye whitening, just make the whites of her eyes a little bit brighter. Go easy on this slider, much like teeth whitening, it can go overboard really fast. And then I love eye enhancer. You'll notice as I bring that up really high, the effect still stays pretty natural, but it lightened up the eyes a little bit. It added a little bit of texture and detail, and they just look beautiful. I will back it off a little bit. I want to keep it looking natural. If there was red eye from Flash, you can remove that. She doesn't look like she's very tired, but you can remove dark circles if you want to. Not much there to remove. And you can also do a little bit of improve eyebrows, and that just adds a little bit more definition to the eyebrows. We can also go down to the mouth section and give her a little bit of lipstick. So a little bit of saturation, a little bit of redness, a little bit of darkening. Teeth aren't showing, again, be very gentle with teeth whitening and go overboard really fast. And let's take a quick look here at what we've done. Here's the before and the after. Now I'm looking at her eyes and I'm thinking I might have gone still a little bit overboard. So I'm going to pull back on that iris visibility and a little bit on that iris flare. This is probably one of my best tips for whatever program you're using for editing. When you make a change, especially one when you're retouching humans, turn that off, whatever tool it is, turn it back on and see what the overall result is of that. That's when you're going to really know if you need to pull it back a little bit. Sometimes it's easy to get carried away with your edits, and by taking a moment to look at the before and after can really, really help. Next, we'll do a little bit with skin. So we're going to bring up the skin. So the amount of skin AI is skin softening. So you can see I bring that up really high. She starts to look like a porcelain doll. It's definitely over the top. But somewhere around 40, I think looks really nice. You'll see we still have great texture and definition, but it's just smoothed out some of those imperfections. We can also use our shine removal, which gets rid of some of the more egregious shine here and tones that down. And if she had any blemishes, skin defects removal will remove most of them automatically. Now, body AI, since this is just an upper body portrait, there's not much we can do with body AI. But again, if you're photographing somebody full body with a wide angle lens and you made them look a little too wide from that distortion, you can use these to correct some of that distortion. So very, very helpful in doing portrait retouching. I'll go ahead and zoom back out here and take any questions. Anything else? We can do one more image, I think. All right, let's go ahead and do a sky replacement with some reflection. So this is one of our newer features, is adding reflections in with the sky replacement. So when you replace the sky with water in the image, it looks pretty strange if the light is not reflected properly and the clouds are not reflected properly on the water. So that's what we wanted to do with that addition to this tool. I'm going to go over to our edit tab. We'll scroll up to the top. We'll do a little bit of our enhance AI. And that's just going to kind of improve the image. Do some crop composition AI and crop this down a little bit. We'll see what this does. I might adjust that right about there. I don't want to cut off the top of the head there at the bottom. Hit return on my keyboard. And now let's go down to our sky AI. Now, when you're doing a sky replacement, you want to pay attention to the direction of light, the quality of light. So in looking at this image, the natural light source is directly behind this person. You can see the sun is kind of glowing around them. If the sun placement of any sky that you put in here is different than that, it's going to look pretty funny. And it's going to be kind of a dead giveaway that it's not natural. So we want to look for a sky that has a sun right on the horizon here. So we'll go into our sky selection. I'm going to go out to all skies. And we'll take a look through here and see if we can find one where the sun is placed appropriately. So this one here is pretty close. This one here could work, as could that one. This one might work here. You can see that there's a handful where the sun is placed just about where we want it. Here we go. This one here I think might work beautifully. Go ahead and load that up and give it a moment to render. And there we go. So now our sun in our replacement sky is placed almost exactly where we need it to look natural wrapping around this person. Now let's adjust it a little bit. We'll bring our shift down a little bit, bring that horizon down to the make it so it's placed correctly. Under sky orientation, we can shift the vertical and horizontal position of this. So I'm going to reset that. And then I can move that sun right where I need it. I'm also going to add some horizon blending. Pardon me, talking too much today. And bring that up maybe a little bit more, adjust that a little bit. Actually, it doesn't need a whole lot. Right about there looks good. Now let's go down to our scene relighting. I'm going to bring that relight strength up a bit higher and bring in that relight saturation. So far so good. You can see a little bit of reflection down here from the sky, but not too much. If we want more, we can go into this reflection section. And by default, it's set at 50. If you don't want any reflection, you can pull that back off, or you can crank that up a bit higher for a more dramatic effect. I think a little bit extra is good, but not too much. If you have some natural water blur going on, you can also add blur to the effect in the water. And that's where I keep that probably pretty low. Now here's where Relight Human comes in. Let's go ahead and zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. And I'm gonna rack this up really, really high. Go ahead and drag that all the way up, and you'll see how that helps the light from the sky wrap more naturally around the person. It just does an amazing job at relighting those edges. And I don't know how it does it, just magic. So we can pull that back off, back on, so much better. So let's take a look over at our overall before and our after. It's pretty miraculous to me what it can do. And truly just a lot of fun. I love having this kind of technology available. I used to try to do some sky replacements in Photoshop. I was never terribly successful. I even tried using some other plugins that had different masking tools to make it easier. Never did a very good job. Was never anything that I would even feel comfortable adding to something in my portfolio or entering in competition. But with what's available today with Sky AI, I feel like I can do a pretty tremendous job, and it produces really, really great results. All right.
I have a question for you on the AI portion versus Luminar 4. Can you, if you bought Luminar 4 skies or LUTs and things, can you apply that into Luminar AI?
So for skies and LUT specifically, absolutely yes.
Okay.
So your skies are going to be JPEG format. So those JPEGs can be brought over into Luminar AI, no problem at all. And same with LUTs. Those are typically .cube files, and you can use those under the mood tool. So if I go back over here to edit, and let's go ahead and scroll down here to our mood tool, this is where you can add a LUT. So you would just go into this list. You can load a custom LUT file, navigate to its location on your hard drive, and load it up.
So it's the same way as AI if you have it in Luminar 4. Okay, cool.
Yep. All right. Any other questions?
I have another question.
Go for it.
Do you advise or not advise using any of the either Luminar or Luminar AI as a plugin to say my original photo editing? Is it better to use it as a standalone software and then simply export the finished product into my photo editing software?
What is your typical, are you using Lightroom or something else?
I'm using Photoshop Elements.
Okay. So if you're using Photoshop Elements, using Luminar AI as a plugin, you're going to get all of the same editing tools. The only difference is you're not going to have access when you're using it with Photoshop or Photoshop Elements to Composition AI. And that's because those are both layer-based programs. If you were to crop and change the size of your image in Luminar and then send it back to the home program, it's not going to line up. So this tool is disabled, but everything else is the same.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Now, in our documentation, it does say that Elements is not officially supported. It
Yes,
does
I saw
work.
that.
It does work. So if you need instructions for installing that, it's just a manual installation process instead of like the one-click button. I can give you those instructions. Just email me at angela@skylum.com. I'll be happy to send those to you.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I have a question. I use Lightroom and make photo books. Would my workflow be to import in Lightroom and then use Luminar and then put it back in Lightroom?
So we actually have a plugin for Lightroom Classic, and I think it goes all the way back to Lightroom 6. If you're using an older version of Lightroom, I believe anything back to Lightroom 6 and newer, you should be able to use the plugin. So you, from the plugin, from Lightroom, you can right-click on the image, go to export, and then you can send either your RAW file or copy with Lightroom adjustments to Luminar. Make your adjustments, anything you want to do in Luminar, hit apply, and it brings it round trip right back to Lightroom.
I have the latest Lightroom. I subscribe to it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I use as well. That's my personal, for my work, I use Lightroom for my home base. I use Photoshop. I use a handful of other tools too. And Luminar works brilliantly as a plugin.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Go for it.
I have a question, or two questions actually. I don't use any editing software right now. So I was curious about like the sky replacement and other things. Are those considered photo editing, or would that, like for the camera club, be considered creative? Where does photo editing stop and creative start?
So Peter or Gordy, I'm going to defer that question to you because I don't know your club's rules.
Well, to start with, I'll take a whack. To start with, anything you submit has got to be your own work. So if you were adjusting or tweaking your sky with a sky replacement and it looked completely natural, but so long as it's your picture, that should be fine and it looks natural. If you were tweaking or replacing with something that doesn't look natural, that would be the creative, that would something you would enter in the creative category, but nonetheless, it would still have to be your work.
Right.
And what Angela said earlier is you can start running into issues if you start inserting somebody else's sky into your picture or anything like that. So anytime you do, exactly, there's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Gordon, the way the club rules state, even the sky replacement needs to be your sky, whether it looks natural or in a one that's provided by Luminar.
Yeah, that's
It has
correct.
to be your sky.
That's correct, Richard. Anything you submit's got to be your work. If you substituted a small portion of something or whatever in your picture, whatever you substitute in has to also be yours. So it has to be your work all the way around.
Okay.
So you can use your own skies. I think I showed that a little bit earlier, but if you wanted to add a single sky, so you've taken an image, you've got it in a JPEG or a TIFF format, you can go down to the bottom of your all skies list. Here's a plus button and you can add them one at a time. Or if you go up to the all skies drop down at the bottom, show custom skies, you can bring in a folder of your own skies. So skies custom. Here's all the folders. Most of these are ones that I purchased or received from Skylum. But right here, this one called My Favorite Skies, those are my skies. Okay. So anything I use for Camera Club is going to have to be one of these because we have the same rule that you have to use your own elements.
Your own elements. Okay. The second question was, I know a lot of the softwares out there, like Lightroom and stuff, they do like a monthly fee so that you get software upgrades and troubleshooting. Is that the same with Luminar AI?
So our software is a one-time purchase. We do, however, release new major paid versions about once a year, typically in the fall. So right around the holidays, we'll probably come out with a new major paid version. We usually offer upgrade discounts for all of our customers. So if you already have a copy, you can upgrade at a discount. The big difference is you're not under any obligation to discount or obligation to upgrade. So if you're happy with the tool set in Luminar AI as it is today or as it is at that point, you are under no obligation to upgrade. And we will continue even after the new version comes out to provide support for that product for at least 12 to 18 months, which means new camera support. If there's a major operating system change, like for instance, this last year we had macOS Big Sur come out. So we updated Luminar 4, which is our previous application, for the new operating system. All new functionality, all new tools will go to the new version, but we do still support the older version.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's one of those things that's, some people don't like the subscription. I mean, new research, new development, new software takes time, money, development, all of those things. But we don't want to force you into buying something if what you have works great for you.
Right. Okay. And I know you mentioned a lot of the things the AI can do, and I'm a newbie at all this. So if you scanned 35 millimeter photos, can you fix them with AI?
Yeah, definitely. So when you're scanning images, I'd recommend doing it at the highest resolution possible. Save it as a TIFF file if you can, and then bring that TIFF file into Luminar AI.
Okay.
I've done that before with my own images. I've had other users submit images to me and I've worked on them. You can do some really, really nice things with it. And for instance, the Enhance AI works great. Structure AI works great. And if you have an image that is discolored and you can't get rid of color casts, we have a color tool. We even have a remove color cast slider, which can help. It doesn't fix all of them. So like that 80s film that had that horrible, everything turned magenta, that's really hard to get rid of. Sometimes it's best to convert it to black and white, and our black and white tool is awesome as well.
You also have a color balance tool in the pro section that might help that.
Yes. So color harmony has a lot of different options. It actually is 4 tools in one. So all of these can help with that. And I think you're referring here to this color balance section. And this is where you can target these different hues within your shadows, midtones, and highlights.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. So let me go ahead and switch back over to the presentation here for a couple minutes, and then we'll have a little bit more time for more questions. We did talk a little bit about using Luminar AI as a plugin. I use it as a plugin with Lightroom and Photoshop all the time. It works brilliantly. We have instructions for if you're using Elements, you can use it. It's not one of our published features, but it does work. If you're using something like Affinity Photo or Capture One, there are workarounds. It's not officially supported, but for most users, it does work fine. So there's a lot of different ways that you can integrate Luminar AI into your workflow. Even if you're using Photos for Mac, that works as a Photos for Mac extension, also works really great. So it can really extend the tool set that you have available to you, whether you're just starting out or you already have an established workflow.
Do you
If you guys-
anticipate, oops, excuse me. Do you have anticipate any issues with the new Windows 11 coming out?
That's a great question. So we are actually working with Microsoft on that. And we actually had Luminar AI featured in their demos of Windows 11. So
Cool.
I'm anticipating a very smooth transition there. We'll know more once everything is officially released, but we're working together with them. It's some pretty cool stuff. The demos that they've actually featured us in have been pretty awesome. So if you guys are interested in adding Luminar AI to your workflow, this particular coupon code, and it didn't say that is not the right coupon code. Excuse me just a second. Let me pull that up. I believe it is. That's the right one. I changed it and it didn't save. I hate when that happens. All right. So this is your coupon code. This will save you $10 off of Luminar AI. So if you go to the website, when you go to checkout, enter this code to save $10, and it is good for 10 days. If you have any questions, you can always reach me at angela@skylum.com. Our support team is at support@skylum.com. So here's a few of those resources. Our website is skylum.com. I mentioned you can email support@skylum.com. We also have a great support page here, skylum.com/support. We have a killer user guide, and you can find that directly at manual.skylum.com. Or let me go ahead and just escape out of this here really quick and point this out. From our help menu, you can go straight to our user guide. And our user guide has descriptions of every single tool that's in the program. It's searchable. It's available in a bunch of different languages. And you can even download a PDF if you want to have it available to you offline. So definitely something to keep in mind. And like I said, there's, if you want to know what the dramatic tool does, like, okay, you've moved the slider around, but what exactly is it doing? This will tell you exactly what every single slider in there does. So it's very, very helpful. Encourage you to bookmark it, use it often. So let's go ahead and jump back over here to this. We also have an awesome community at insiders.skylum.com. Think of it as like Facebook, but without all the drama. It's only photographers, it's only Luminar AI users. You can share photos, you can ask questions, you get sneak peeks at upcoming technology. There's tons of educational materials. My colleague Vanelli and I post in there frequently. Our executive team hangs out in there, our engineers hang out in there, along with, I think, something like 30,000 users. So it's a really, really cool place and a very active community. So if you decide to invest in Luminar AI, make sure you join insiders.skylum.com. And I'll see you there all the time if you're there. We also have what we call Coffee Break. My colleague Vanelli and I do twice daily live stream broadcasts on various tutorials, topics, photography, Luminar, all sorts of fun things. One of them is for our insiders group only. That one is at 10 a.m. Pacific. So that would be 1 p.m. for you guys. We also do one live every day on YouTube, and that's going to be at 5 p.m. for you. So the YouTube ones are recorded. You can go back and watch those anytime. If you go to luminar.tips/coffee break, that'll take you to that entire playlist of coffee break episodes. And of course, you can find Skylum on all of your favorite social media channels. And if you want to reach me, go ahead.
One of the things with the coffee break that I like is it's one subject, one specific thing that they're talking about, and it's about 10 to 15 minutes long. So it's
Yes.
not going to take an hour of your time. It's just perfect.
Well, so that depends on if you're watching it on Insiders or if you're doing it on YouTube. The YouTube ones, the topics are the same. So week 1, we'll do a topic on Insiders. We'll do that same topic on YouTube the following week. And when we do it on YouTube, that is usually between 10 and 15 minutes. It's very concise. There's a live chat if you wanted to ask questions. But if you join us over on Insiders, the presentation of it is going to be, again, about the 10 to 15 minutes, but the entire sessions can last up to an hour or sometimes a little bit more. And the reason for that is we do it on Zoom, kind of like this meeting where we can see everybody face to face. People can unmute, ask questions. It's very, very interactive and it's a lot of fun, sometimes a little bit irreverent, really, really fun group of people. So definitely check that out if you're interested. All right. So if you guys have questions for me, anything about Luminar AI, coffee break, anything, email me at angela@skylum.com and I will be happy to help you. If you wanted to learn a little bit more about my photography, you can find me at angelaandrew.com, at AngeAndrew on Instagram and Twitter, and on Facebook at Angela Andrew Photography. All right, so that's pretty much all I have for you. Are there any other questions before we wrap things up?
Angela, I have a quick question.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just was curious. You said you shoot the Canon R6 mirrorless system.
Correct.
Are you using lenses that are specific to R series lenses that go with that camera, or the EF lenses, and your opinion of it?
I have both. I so far have only one RF lens. It's the 24-105 f4, and it's a wonderful lens. I love it. It works also great with all of my EF lenses. I have the adapter that has the control ring, and it's pretty cool. The only thing is it does add a little bit of length to all of the lenses, so it's not as compact. Eventually, I will upgrade to all of the RF lenses, but at $1,000 to $2,000 a pop, it's going to take a little while. So for now, I'm going to work with my stable of lenses that I have already.
Because I was considering making a switch to the R series, because I am a Canon user now, so I just was curious. Thank you.
You're welcome. No, I mean, the quality between the EF and the RF lenses on the R body is, I don't notice any quality difference. Now, if you compare some of the specs of the RF lenses to their older EF counterparts, some of them have, a stop or two better in image stabilization. Maybe they've improved the optics a little bit. But as far as what I can see with my naked eye, even zooming in and pixel peeping on the screen, the images are clean and beautiful. And I haven't noticed any loss between using the adapter, loss of light, loss of focusing distance or focusing ability, any of that. They work great.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Angela, is Skylum capable of handling the CRAW format?
The CRAW. You mean like the Canon RAW?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Luminar AI supports the CR3 format. Now, if you're shooting with the Canon R5, there are a couple of known issues with the raw files from that, and they're intermittent. It's not all the time. But if you run into problems with the R5, reach out to our support team. They are working on getting those intermittent issues fixed. But otherwise, all of the CR3 files work with Luminar AI. If you're using one of our other applications like Aurora HDR, which is for HDR photography, a lot of fun, that has not yet been updated for CR3 support. So you have to convert those files to a DNG or use Lightroom to convert it to a TIFF before you send it over to Aurora HDR.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Any other questions?
Well, I have a request.
Go ahead.
Sure.
I was wondering, my fingers don't type fast enough to get all of the letters that were in all of those different contacts. Can someone send an email with those, all of that stuff so we can have access to it?
Better yet,
You can definitely do that. I can send Peter the copies of the slides, and then he can send those out to you guys.
yeah, better yet, we have been recording this entire show, this entire program, and I will have it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So you can be able to go there and freeze frame wherever you want and take however long you want, writing it down or whatever you like.
Okay, my fingers don't like you very much now, but I can do that.
But in the meantime, what was the code again?
Let me grab that for you. I'll put it into the chat.
Couldn't tell if it was UG or UC in the chat. It was so tiny.
It's actually UG.
UG CCB 10.
Wasn't there a dash?
Yes.
UG-CCB 10.
And that's, you go to www.skylum.com.
Yep.
To purchase. Okay, thank you.
Very welcome. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I know I'm talking a lot. I apologize for that, but I've had a chance to use Luminar AI for a long time now. And I've had some questions that I've addressed through email and your customer support team. And it's absolutely fantastic. I'll get an answer back within an hour, maybe 2 or 3, or if it's in, nighttime overseas, the next day. But it's absolutely fabulous with accurate information.
Oh, that is wonderful to hear. I'm so glad that that's worked out well for you. Our support team really is made up of rock stars, and I'm glad to hear that you've had a good experience.
Many times.
Good.
So one other quick question. If you already have Luminar 4, is there any additional discounts besides the one that you gave us for Luminar AI?
Right now, that is the best offer I can give you. But if you reach out to support@skylum.com and let them know that you're already a Luminar 4 user, they might be able to get you a slightly better discount.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Anything else?
All right, everyone, here's your chance.
Going once, going twice.
Well, Angela,
All right, well,
thank you so much for coming and giving us the presentation on Luminar. It's the whole AI world is just exploding everywhere, and you guys seem to have a jump on it. So it seems to me that you're taking all of the best of the AI photography community and putting it into this program. So it really is terrific.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you guys spending some time with me this evening. It's been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed sharing Luminar AI and photography with you. Keep out there, get out there, take some photos, have fun, and enjoy that trip out to Cape Canaveral and the lighthouse. That sounds awesome. And if I was closer, I would join you.
So how did you wind up getting from Richmond, Virginia to outside of San Diego there? Was this
My husband's in the military.
I was just going to say, was this a Navy PCS or how did that work out?
Yep, Navy PCS. We've actually, in the time my husband's career, we've been here in San Diego 3 times.
Wow.
So,
well, you must have the place pretty much down pat then. Is he assigned to a ship, or is he assigned to the base?
He's assigned to a ship.
Uh-huh.
He's on the USS Gabrielle Giffords. It's an LCS.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So, yep, Navy life takes us all over the place.
Yes,
it's actually what kind of got me into photography, because we spent 4 years in Italy, and that's where I truly fell in love with photography. I had an interest before that, but that's where I learned to use my camera. I joined my first photo club there on the base. And, that's where I learned what an aperture was, what an ISO was, and, threw myself into it whole hog, and there's just been no looking back. It's an obsession that just never quits.
Good. Good.
Angela, I just want to say that you did an absolutely great job. You know what you're talking about. You explained it very well. It's nice to have somebody make a presentation and know exactly what they're talking about. You did a great job. Thank you.